platform is easier for you.
Yes.
All right, moving on.
Moving on.
Let's go to Brendan Schaub next. I wore my thick boy hat today because it's a rare day where I can wear this in earnestness. And I think, like, unless I'm missing something, I think this is a great Brendan Schaub moment.
Yep.
Where he's just let go and he's like, you know what? Fuck everyone. So do you know who this SteveWillDoIt guy is?
I've seen him on Twitter, but other than that, I have no clue.
So I don't know. I guess he's involved with the Nelk Boys or something. He is part owner of that Happy Dad, the Seltzers, I think, or has something to do with that. He's got some tie to Dana White. I don't know who he is. He has a ton of followers on Twitter. He got a big following. I've seen some of his rants. He seems a little unhinged on Twitter, but I don't know the context. I don't know him at all. And so Dana White, after UFC 300, which I watched, by the way, a rare Mike Geary viewing of a UFC fight.
Mm-hmm.
I guess UFC 300 was a big success, and a lot of people criticized it. I don't really know about that. And Brendan Schaub was one of the people that criticized the card. He said, for for a 300, for like a big event like that, it was not it. I believe was Brendan Schaub's take.
Oh, that was a great card.
Well, then after the success of it, Dana White put out a video where he's basically like, "Hey, fuck all the media that thought this would suck." And one of the highlights in there is Brendan Schaub. It's pretty funny. Mm-hmm. So for some reason, SteveWillDoIt interjects into this conversation. And he deleted the tweets, so I don't have them. Luckily, our boy, Too Lazy to Try, great YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're into comedy, you probably already are subscribed. But if you're not, go subscribe because he's good. He doesn't follow, like, all the stories that I'm into, and some I don't care about that he covers. But like the big stuff, he's always got. He's got the good news on Too Lazy to Try. So it's a good for comedy news. It's a good source, I would say. That and Joke World, I think, are both pretty good.
And Scion Z.
Yes, and Unique.
Unique. That's right.
Unique is good. Yeah. Although Unique is very focused on Brendan Schaub specifically these days. Not much else gets in there.
Well, it's kind of like Turtle Boy and Karen Reed.
Yeah, it is. It's oddly, it is like that. Yes.
Just interwoven into the story now.
Yeah, he's obsessed. But yeah, Too Lazy to Try has the tweets that are now deleted, and we'll tell you why those no longer exist in a minute. But here's some of SteveWillDoIt's tweets about Brendan.
So he said, Dana White is a top-tier human. Brandon Schaub, you're an effing goofball. I thought you were a former UFC fighter. You failed at comedy, and you can't even talk about UFC right. Brandon Schaub is a loser. He also said, Dana White just took a dump on all the haters. Brandon Schaub, you're an effing goofball. Least funny comedian out there. At least he's referring to him as a comedian. I'd say that's a W for Brandon Schaub. And then Steve made a couple more tweets and said, Brandon Schaub, more like Brandon Slob, #loser. Then he also said, imagine being a former UFC fighter and get introduced by Dana White as a podcaster. LOL, Brandon Schaub, loser. So
and I gotta say, the homeless cats have much better stuff than that. These are not original insults, really.
Right.
But I don't understand the animosity. Like that wasn't one, that was a series of tweets. He's going off on Brendan, or as he calls him, Brandon, for some reason.
It's insulting.
He seems very, very worked up. I don't know the source of this anger. If you guys do, feel free to leave it in the comments, because I don't know much about SteveWillDoIt, but he's very worked up about Brendan for some reason. And so Brendan went on his show and responded. Now, what's interesting is Brendan and Dana White are all good. Brendan actually handled this the way I've been saying for a long time. I hope he starts to kind of realize this stuff. Maybe he is. Because Brendan responded to Dana White basically like, that's pretty funny. You got me, like he took it all in stride. No big deal. So SteveWillDoIt missed the mark on this one. Like him and Dana were being playful about it. And for some reason, the Steve guy like rushed to Dana White's defense when he didn't need it. But, we hear Brendan now going on his show and addressing this.
Like, what's it? SteveWillDoIt. He came at me on Twitter. I was like, what? Like,
why though?
Why, Baba?
He's close with Dana, and I think he's young. I don't know how old he is, but I think he's young. So maybe that's his way of like getting his boys back, which I respect. I get that. But this isn't, you're you don't know what you're doing. You're not educated on the dynamics of everything, and that stuff doesn't bother me. You know, I've dealt with much worse.
Wow.
But I just think he's
Well,
ill-informed.
I gotta interject. I was gonna let him finish, but hey, Brendan, that you gotta shake that off. It does bother you a little bit, and that's fine. Like if a guy was going off on me like that, it would bother me. I'd be like, "What the fuck? Why is he angry? Who is this man? Why is he so pissed?" So that's what Brendan's got to drop, is this idea that he's unfazed by comments, and he started to a little bit. Remember at Skankfest, there were clips of him going around where he was like, you know, like you remember I think we played the clip where he's like, "Oh, Reddit, that scares me. I don't go there." Like he was being playful about it. So that's one thing. Like he does a pretty good job here, but that's one thing he should drop, is the idea that he's like completely unfazed by criticism, because there are guys that it doesn't bother at all, but I don't think Brendan's one of them. But I apologize, Brendan. Continue.
But I try to look at his perspective. He's probably like, you know, wants to ride with Dana, and Dana helps him out, and they're boys, right? And I think they own that, you know, whatever the alcohol
Happy
is.
Dad?
Yeah, Happy Dad. Or I don't know. I assume they have business together. So he's defending his boy, which I get and I love. I do the same. I ride for my guys. Like, do a little research. I'm not this isn't it, bud. This isn't it. And maybe again, the news cycle takes forever, and he's probably not paying attention to what I do. I couldn't tell you what he does.
Which maybe that's Brendan being kind of a cunt. Maybe he does know what he does and he's lying. But like, I don't know. SteveWillDoIt's not a household name. I have no fucking idea who he is either, and I'm not throwing shade, as they say. I genuinely like did a cursory research, and I was like, I don't know who this guy is. He owns Happy Dad, I think, but that's all I could figure out.
Is that the guy that Coach HP interviewed?
Not to my knowledge.
Something Dads, right?
Oh no, not even close.
Oh, just kidding. Just kidding.
Not even remotely close. Guys, go back. Go back and watch the clip that you're referring to. You just go watch every Coach HP episode we've done. You'll figure it out. And imagine that man going at Brendan Schaub and calling him a pussy.
Well, I didn't know if it was the company. I know it wasn't SteveWillDoIt, but it could have been the company.
This guy that wrote a book on fatherhood and peaceful parenting. Hey, homo. You're a failed comic. What a wildly, I don't know if anyone's ever been that wrong before.
Man, you just prove, like, if you say homo in the right context, it still slaps pretty goddamn hard.
Yeah, well, you're wrong. Despite the fact that he owns Happy Dad seltzers, it doesn't make him a father. It doesn't mean he wrote a book on fatherhood. They're actually different people.
Next, we have failure. Kind of like my analogy.
Okay, so this is Brendan. This is Brendan. Not like you want to talk about Brendan being a failure. That's in the eye of the beholder, I suppose.
You know, the other guys are just podcasters. You know, I have a background, so there's stuff you can go after. Yeah, I wasn't world champion. No, I'm not Kevin Hart or Joe Rogan. You know,
okay, hold on. I forgot about the first half of this. We're getting to a place where I'm really going to defend Brendan. And I might even cheer for Brendan. Give him an attaboy.
Right.
I forgot the first half of this was old Brendan. It was typical Brendan, where he's like, sure, I'm not Kevin Hart or Joe Rogan. First of all, why are those your examples of funny comedians? Like, I mean, Rogan I get, but like, Kevin Hart is not, he's a self-help guy at this point. He does DraftKings commercials. He's not a comedian anymore, you know? It's interesting psychologically that his examples of like great comedians are the two most financially successful guys, rather than, you know, like Dave Attell or Colin Quinn or something, you know?
Right.
Like, just psychologically, that's interesting. But also, like, Brendan, I would say, again, if we're going to be real, if we're going to live in the real world, I don't know, there's a few hundred names you could list before you, like, actively. And that's not a slight on Brendan Schaub. I'm, you know, as far as success goes in podcasting, I'm significantly further down the list. But if you want to view, like, guys that are respected in comedy, there are a lot ahead of Brendan. It's not just two guys, you know?
Correct.
thing.
No, I'm not Kevin Hart or Joe Rogan. You know, so you can poke stuff at that. It's like, oh, you just don't know, Bubba. Failed comedian. Oh, buddy, you don't know comedy. You don't know
Hate this.
comedy. That
Oh
doesn't work.
God, we're here to defend Brendan today,
We got to be.
but I forgot how much I hated this part.
Can't be biased. You got to show the good and the bad.
You don't know, buddy. Brendan, you quit comedy. You quit stand-up.
You sold a ticket.
Which again, he's way more successful in stand-up than me. You know, like the average asshole on the internet that makes fun of him.
Stuttering John.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, way more successful than Stuttering John. Undoubtedly.
That's right.
Like, and Brendan, here's where you can compliment Brendan, is like John, as much as he calls himself a comedian, has never put a clip of himself doing stand-up out there. Brendan watched Gringo Poppy and said, release this to the world. I don't care what they say about it. Like, that's balls. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I would want that under lock and key if it existed of me doing that. But Brendan like has the courage to release that to the world. That is absolutely something. It's something that like Stuttering John doesn't have, where he's afraid to release his stuff because he thinks it's going to get mocked. At least Brendan puts his stuff out there. So yes, he's more success. But I don't love this act of like, you made fun of my comedy, Papa. That's not it, guy. Yeah, yes, it is, Brendan. People are allowed to make fun of your comedy. You're not so respected in comedy that you're untouchable, you know? Like, that doesn't have to be the argument of every... And we get it sometimes. Like, we posted a video of Chris D'Elia last week. And, you know, whenever we do that, or Brendan Schaub, or guys like that, we inevitably get comments where it's like, what have you done? Oh, nothing. I'm significantly less successful than those guys. Like by leaps and bounds, which is why it's interesting to talk about. I'm not going to open mics and taking videos surreptitiously of people and be like, Craig, you got to see this piece of shit. Look at this guy try. No, they put this stuff out there, and this is the stuff I like to talk about, so we're going to talk about it. Like the same way that, you know, I can criticize an NFL quarterback, but I never played football a day in my life, you know?
Right.
That's how I look at it. So yes, Brendan, you are more successful than a lot of these people, but when someone online calls you a failed comic, your response shouldn't be like it's Joe Rogan, Kevin Hart, and then me.
He always does that.
That's not it, guy. I could say that.
It's not it, Baba.
That's not it, buddy.
From your outside perspective, I'm not at Kevin Hart or Joe Rogan or Sebastian's level. No. Does that mean I
Stop
failed?
naming arena acts.
And 99.999% of comics fail. If that's your level, then yeah, all of us are failures for about 5 guys in the world to ever do it.
Yeah, that's where I get what he's trying to say, but it's not 5 guys. Like there are a couple hundred comics that you can definitely say are better than Brendan Schaub, like working right now. Mm-hmm. And I think here's the thing that Brendan's like ignoring. If you lined them up, I think Brendan would say, yes, this guy's a better comedian than me. That guy's a better comedian than me. You know what I mean? Like if you got the Skankfest lineup out and we're like, get an order of talent. I don't think Brendan would rush to the front, you know?
You don't
I guess
think?
that's my point.
You don't think?
Mowing down Tim Dillon and Shane. Just pushing Ari Shaffir out of the way.
Next we got Step Outside.
This is the part I liked. This is where it's like, you know, Brendan, if you're going to take comments this seriously, you've either got to go one of 2 ways. You've got to be totally in on the joke and roll with it and say, hey, I'm the type of comedian, whatever confidence I have in my material, I'm the type of comedian people are going to make fun of, or you can do this. And I respect both tactics just as much.
Yeah, with Steve, I have no issues with him. He seems like a good guy. Anybody that knows him tells me he's a good guy. I don't know what he does. Maybe just ill-informed. But I'm easy to find. Super easy to find. Super easy to find. You know? And we have a mutual friend in Bradley Martin. I text Brad yesterday. I talk to Brad probably once a week. Brad's a close buddy of mine. Help me out, with my energy levels and peptides and all. Like, Brad's my guy. Yeah. Absolutely adore Bradley. He's the fucking man. And he's best friends with Steve. So there's a mutual friend there. So I'm easy to find. You can get my number from Bradley. If there's something going on that I don't know about, you're so upset, I can meet you at Zoo Culture, whichever location you want. We can meet there. We can talk about it. If you're so mad, we can go in the back room and figure it out. You sign papers that you're not going to sue or anything like that. We can figure it out.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's Brendan's best response, I think, where he's just had enough. And maybe he's done that before. And I think if he does this all the time, then I don't like it as much. But I'm watching it from the angle of, like, Brendan has just eaten shit for 8 years in stand-up comedy. People insulting him, like breaking down, and I'm including me in that. People breaking down his specials and laughing at them, his peers calling him a fucking moron, and just being mocked relentlessly. And after all this time, Brendan's finally like, then why don't you fucking fight me? How about that?
Do something.
Then say it to my face, you motherfucker. What's that?
Was there something about I don't know if it was Skankfest or something, but there was talks of him fighting trolls.
Lewis wanted Brendan Schaub to wear a bunch of padding, and trolls could just like have at him basically, but Brendan would be able to fight back. Which would have been great.
People always say he's like a failed fighter. And like he did say that was part, like he didn't win the championship, but he was top 10 in the world. Like,
yeah, well, here's the thing. It's
insane.
The better analogy that Brendan is trying to use for comedy.
Yeah.
He has that for fighting.
Correct.
Where it's like he got into comedy. The reason he's as successful as he was in comedy is because of Joe Rogan. If a guy named Brendan Schaub just started as an open mic and did the material that he's done for the last 8 years, 10 years, whatever, we wouldn't know his name.
Right.
Like, and that, I mean, that's just true. I don't know if Brendan would argue that or not. But like, the reason we know his name is because he was famous first for something else. That's just a fact.
And Dave Sarah, Schaub knocked out Crow Cop. That did happen.
Well, so yeah. So the argument that Brendan's trying to make for comedy, he should apply that to fighting. When people are like, oh, you're a failed fighter, you lost, this and that. Just be like, yeah, I mean, I was ranked fucking 11th in the world or whatever he was.
Yeah.
You know? Like, what percentage of people rise to that level? And if you want to criticize him as a fighter, well, then fight him, I guess. You know?
Yep.
No, but that's the other thing is like people can criticize Brendan as a fighter, but he's not a failed fighter. You can argue that he's a failed comedian, but I like the idea of him just being fed up with it and being like, well, then come to my gym. Hey, Royce and Mersch, why don't you come to my gym?
If you can knock out Crow Cop, you can legitimately knock out anybody on this planet.
There you
go. Next we got he's not bothered.
Yeah, well, like you can tell he's definitely bothered. And that's, again, what I would drop Brendan. But I do like this approach because, you know what? If Brendan came out to me at Skankfest and was like, I saw the video you did about our ticket sales in Austin. I'd be like, oh, that? You know, Craig and Carl were actually putting me up to that. Oh, those rascals.
That was the thing though with Legion of Skanks when we were talking shit about him and stuff. They were all like, I don't think we could take them all three of us on him.
Well, here's the reality. If I don't think Brendan should fight me for anything I've said about him or anyone else on Twitter. Well, I mean, there's some people on Reddit maybe that deserve a beating probably, but
yeah.
You know what I mean? In general, like people that just mock him online or whatever don't deserve to have the shit beaten out of them by a fucking Neanderthal. But really, what I would say to Brendan is like I would defend some of the stuff we said, but if he's face to face with me, I'd probably be a little intimidated. Knowing he could rip my fucking head off, you know?
If he's talking to you, you're gonna expand your cane to just be like, you do see this, right?
Yeah, I'm just making sure.
I want you to make sure you know I'm blind.
Purposely bumping into things.
Oh, jeez.
Brendan, you wouldn't want to fight a disabled man, of course. I know that. No, like here's where Brendan's had to figure out like a line is he can beat up all of us. So either you have to do that and you have to be like, I don't mind being mocked, or I'm gonna just kick the shit out of you. And if he can do that funny, I think this is kind of a funny approach. Like, what he has to mix in with it is acknowledging his comedy is not that of Joe Rogan or Kevin Hart. You know?
Yeah.
Like, you kind of have to do it, but also just fucking fight me then. You know, like, that's kind of a funny approach. The issue is he does seem bothered, as we'll see in this clip.
But again, and it's not a bully thing. It's not a cocky thing. I think why it doesn't bother me, obviously I get a lot of it. It's like I've never, ever, check the receipts. I've never had anybody in stand-up, podcasting, the MMA community, whatever community, trucking, car community, nobody that's ever come after me. I've never been worried if you locked me in a room with them, how it would go. I've never had a single person on this earth come after me that I couldn't beat up. And that's just facts. This isn't a bully thing. This isn't a cocky thing. So I think that's why it doesn't bother me, because I know Steve, or I know insert comic or insert podcast or insert whoever it is from anything that I do that talk shit about me. I know if we were in the same room, you would not talk to me that way.
Terrifying.
That's
Just a frightening man when you think of it that way.
I might have to buy a thick boy hat.
That's what you got to do. That's how you protect yourself. You
Yeah, that's right.
But like even like Crackamico has made a couple songs about Brendan Schaub. But even like he has a lyric in one of them where it's something to the effect of like, Brendan Schaub is a nice guy. I have to say that or I might die. Like, everyone knows you can beat the shit out of us, Brendan. But like so I don't think that's a correct response to most of his trolls. But we're building to something. There's a reason this is very funny. There's a reason I like Brendan talking in this tone, and that's because of the results that it yielded.
He's gonna. This is the last clip here.
Okay, so this is where I really enjoy. Where again, this SteveWillDoIt guy went off on him, so Brendan's like, "Hey, well then, fucking fight me, I guess."
The facts are, I have this set of skills that I still work on, and the set of skills is not for Twitter. It's not for Instagram. It's not for Facebook. Those set of skills are for when I'm with my kids and I'm at a car show.
Something happens.
And you pop off. Yep. And then those skills, while you were busy chugging beer or whatever you're doing or shooting YouTube videos, those are your skills. These skills are going to fuck you up. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, I don't want to.
That's all I'm saying. I love this.
But I don't want to.
I'm a fan of this.
Of this Brendan?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I liked too, where it's like, hey, I don't want to fucking kill you, but you're putting me in a position where I might have to.
You understand, like, if I want to, you'll eat from a straw the rest of your life.
Yeah, like that's kind of funny. Now, I don't think that's how Brendan should respond to everyone that goofs on him on Twitter or on a podcast or anything. Of course not. That'd be silly.
I think you only got to say that once.
But the reason I like this response is because of the results it got. Now, I mentioned SteveWillDoIt deleted all of his tweets.
Yes.
Talking about Brendan Schaub. But then posted one to make up for those. You know, he got back to even. He said, oh, my Brendan Schaub tweets are gone. I better post about him again. And this is the tone that SteveWillDoIt had after this Brendan Schaub rant.
I want to take back anything I said about Brandon Schaub. The guy is a very nice person, and I shouldn't have attacked him.
Hold on. What about what we just heard makes him a nice guy? He's like, fucking meet me in the streets, and I'll murder you.
You want to get locked into a room?
Say it again, motherfucker. I dare you. You can call that a lot of things. Nice guy isn't one of them, I don't think.
I don't think he is a nasty person. My bad, Brandon Schaub.
Still fucking up his name.
Yep. You're a good guy, I feel. Looked into you a little more. It's no more nasty people in 2024, and I don't believe you're nasty. End tweet.
I actually think you're really cool, and your sneakers are nice, and you've got great fashion sense, and you've got a cool haircut. And I think, honestly, I think Gringo Poppy, it's like George Carlin who, you know? Like, I think you revolutionized the art form.
I don't think I've ever laughed harder in my life than watching Gringo Poppy.
Oh my God. Did I say failure? I'm sorry. I started typing F for fucking hilarious.
When you said
And,
Joe Rogan,
and it auto-corrected.
when you said Joe Rogan, I screamed so loud. I was like, woo!
I remember when you shouted out Theo Vaughn, and that was the biggest pop of the special.
Dude, you go Liam Neeson from fucking Taken, but like mean it for real. Like, fuck.
I've got a very special set of skills.
My God, this didn't work out for the last person.
That's horrifying. Sorry I made fun of the video Dana White made. I don't want you to kill me over it.
Please don't.
But that's hilarious. I don't know anything about Steve Will Do It, so maybe I don't have the full context, but it's hilarious to hear that and be like, guys, I've thought about this. Brendan's actually a really nice guy.
He's actually quite nice.